Preparing for life after high school. A transition video series. What can you do at home to support transition to employment? Transitioning our youth. Soft skills, tips for parents. Two women are sitting, facing each other against a brick building background.
I'm Kathy Groh, Transition Coordinator of Warrior Run School District.
And I'm Ann Gelman.
So you're about to watch a short informational video about how you can help your child build on work skills at home. So Ann, the first question is, how can families build work skills at home?
So there's a lot of different skills that we already work on at home, but if we just do them with more intention, I think they'd be really easy for parents to help and guardians to help their young adults to learn work skills. The first I wanted to talk about is interacting with others. So we have a lot of opportunity to interact with people, and just being able to give feedback and maybe prep the young adult for different conversations. So if you're going to a bank, you want to encourage the young adult to make eye contact, and if they are whispering low, just kind of say, okay, well, you need to talk a little louder, give those kind of cues maybe beforehand, and then review with them afterwards too, like, how did that go? How did you feel? What do you think you could have done differently? Sometimes we even use a cell phone to videotape some of those conversations so that the young adult can see themselves and see where they can improve on some of those interpersonal skills. And the other one is personal appearance. Personal appearance is a way of expressing who the person is. So we want to have those conversations. So it's when you're at a job. So this is where we're becoming very intentional. When you're at a job,
employer expectations.
It's great to be yourself, but there are some expectations from your employer. So talking about different places that you would go. So this ties in different places that you would go and how you would dress.
Dressing for the job.
So if you're going to a banquet at the school maybe. So do you want to wear your jeans and a t-shirt, or do you think you should look nicer at a banquet? Because there's a lot of people there, and it's to recognize what people are doing good, and so you want to make a good impression. So we might want to talk about what kind of attire would be appropriate for that, as opposed to a football game in school.
Signals with right hand.
If the family attends church, what's appropriate on maybe like going to church Sunday morning or to a youth gathering Friday night. And just talk about the differences and why you want to present yourself differently at each event. And then along with personal appearances, also hygiene and grooming. So we want to really have those conversations that at least every other day we should be showering, and every day, twice a day, we should be brushing our teeth, and just kind of having those conversations, and let the student or the young adult know how that negatively affects them if they're not doing those things, and how that could really hurt their chances of getting a job.
Responsibility.
And then responsibility. So in the home, we all have jobs to do, right? We have pets at my house, so it's my teenager's job to make sure that he changes the litter box, cleans up after the cat, make sure there's food in the food dish. And so I noticed that if I don't check on that frequently, the litter box is very full, and I'm the one doing it. So we should make sure that when we're assigning tasks to the young adults or the teenagers, that we're saying, okay, this is the expectation. This is how often I want you to do the task, and then after the task, I'm gonna follow up, and I'm gonna make sure you did the job the way you're supposed to do the job. And then as they're starting to do the job, you can back off on that a little bit, but make sure you continue to kind of do those spot checks to make sure that there's that accountability. A lot of times,
problem solving.
We solve a problem, and then afterwards, someone may tell us how we did at solving that problem. That receiving that constructive criticism, that feedback, it's hard for some folks. But if we explain and use opportunities throughout the day to give that constructive criticism and explain that, I'm not trying to make you feel bad about the job you did, I just want you to do better, and these are ways that you can do better. So it kind of gives them that experience of getting that constructive criticism or feedback, and learning how to process that and not feel like people are like being demeaning or mean, and that they can use it to their benefit. And then along with problem solving, we can also take different examples within the household. So next week we may be planning a vacation and we have a cat. So we're going to be gone for this many days. Who's going to take care of the cat? And include the young adult in that conversation. So what do you think? What are some ideas we can come up with on how the cat can be taken care of while we're away? And just kind of bring them into those conversations so that they can think about how to go about problem solving. And then discuss, well, we really don't want to ask, Joe the neighbor because he's never home, and so I'm not sure that he'd do a good job. But your buddy Jim, he's always seems to have time in his hand. Maybe he can, would want to earn a couple bucks and feed the cat for us. So there's, just some things that we're already doing in the home, just with more intent and relating it to how it would help you further your chances of getting a job when you're ready to get that job.
Nods slightly.
So the next one, how can families support success in the workplace?
So there's some struggles, right, with getting a job. Transportation being a big one. If you have a child or a young adult who doesn't drive, you don't live near public transportation. So we really need to talk about these things with the whole support team.
Share rides.
There are different options available that maybe you could ride share or, just kind of talk to different people and see what you can come up with. But again, we can go back to the problem solving. We can include the child in to say, how do you think that would work? But just addressing that problem before it's an issue instead of, a potential barrier. And then a lot of folks who have a disability, they receive cash and medical benefits to help, just day to day. And there's this big misconception about if I go to work, I'm not going to have, those benefits anymore. So just making contact with someone in the Social Security office who really understands that and being educated on that information so you're not scared out of getting a job, kind of that, get all of the facts on that. And then one thing that families know their sons and daughters the best. They know the things that trigger them, things that they can work through, things that maybe kind of help them to just kind of shut down, and then which would hinder them maintaining employment. So we want to talk to, again, the support team and be real open and honest with those triggers and give some feedback on how the
Open communication.
The young adult can be supported through those challenging times. And then when they're ready to get a job, allowing the job coach to have those conversations with the employer so that someone who becomes very upset in a certain situation doesn't lose a job, but the employer knows how to support him through that, him or her through that potential barrier so that employment can be successful.
Transportation is an issue around here, certainly. And I think that if you find employment closer to your home, if you keep that in mind versus
Yes.
trying to go too far,
Absolutely.
it makes a huge difference. So what skills are needed for employment success?
So there's two sets of skills that we talk about when we talk about employment skills. There's those hard skills, which is communication skills, reading, writing. So practicing those in the home, parents and guardians can help, practice those. I read an article that suggested that you do learn a word a day kind of thing. There's also
Interpersonal skills.
like those interpersonal skills that we talked about already, and decision-making skills. And again, we talked about a lot of this. So it's stuff we're already doing, but just being more purposeful as to why we're doing it and how it relates to becoming an employee somewhere. And then just the community will often, or people who we don't know often follow our lead. So if I have an expectation that's here, then everyone around my son is not going to have a higher expectation than me because I know my son the best. But if I have my expectation here, then that's where everyone around my son is going to meet that expectation. They're going to encourage him to meet that expectation level up here as opposed to down here. So we just need to share our aspirations and goals and that we have for our youth, and just make everyone else aware that this is where we think the goals that that person can achieve. And then the second set of goals or skills are those soft skills. And again, we talked about this pretty much already, is when you're talking to people, make sure you have that eye contact. Make sure you're speaking loud enough so that others can hear you. Make sure you're not fidgeting too much. Greeting people with a handshake as opposed to a hug when you're introduced to somebody. When you're passing by someone and there's a little bit of space, you say excuse me. So just those soft personal skills that help people be more accepted than polite. They just seem more polite.
How can families build soft skills then within their home?
So the soft skills can be something that is addressed in an IEP. It can be things that are worked on in the school. That practice and trial and error, set up those events, like I mentioned earlier, at the bank. So remember, when you go into the teller, make sure you make eye contact, make sure you talk loud enough. If you need to, let them know your name,
Right.
give your name.
I think as parents and guardians, we tend to do things for our kids because it's easier that way. And like an example would be where you would go to a restaurant and your child would tell you what they wanted instead of them ordering for themselves.
Right.
So I think that would be a huge help if we allowed them to kind of take that step, or paying for an item. Like you have a tendency to pay for an item for your child versus giving them a money and allowing them to pay for it. Would you agree?
There's so many experiences that we can, if we just encourage the child to do themselves. And we want to stand by and just make sure that everything goes the way it should go, and be able to provide feedback afterwards, because it's always good to have that follow-up conversation. You did really good. You just might want to make sure that you do this the next time. But yeah, ordering at a restaurant is a great example. There's a lot of different skills involved in that.
Nods.
Thank you. Sure.
Networks for Training and Development, Inc. Special thanks to Ann Gelden, consultant for Networks for Training and Development, Inc. for sharing her knowledge. This video series has been made possible through the funding and collaborative support of Northumberland County Department of Behavioral Health, Intellectual and Developmental Services, Warrior Run School District, and Networks for Training and Development Incorporated. Looking for other videos about transition? Check out the rest of the series topics. Understanding transition services, importance of building community relationships, the benefits of working, what is the PA ABLE program?